Hello, and welcome to North Country, now in our 15th season. I'm Bess Kirnie, here today for a conversation with Ruth Fishbeck and Mary Jones about a situation that many of us are now or eventually will face, and that is the care of a loved one at the end of life. Ruth is CEO of Hospice of St. Lawrence County. Mary is their Director of Family Support Services. And together, they will help us understand the role of hospice in end-of-life care and hopefully dispel any myths we might hold. Welcome, Ruth and Mary.
Yes.
And welcome back, Mary. For our viewers who know little about hospice or might have misconceptions about what you do, could you offer briefly the mission of Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley?
Sure. Well, our mission is to provide care at the end of life for those affected by advanced illness. And we take care of the families, we take care of the patients, and in their own homes, in their nursing homes, in hospitals, wherever they may be, to help ease this transitional period.
Okay. And Mary is Director of Family Support Services. What does that mean? What do you provide to families?
So what we at Hospice provide to our patients and family is meeting the patient where they're at. We have social workers that go in and do assessments and then work with the patient and the family on how to navigate this caregiving, how to navigate the dying process. The nurses are doing the same thing, only they're teaching the family how to care for their loved one so that we're not in there 24/7, which I think is really important. So we're teaching the family how to do this. We also have chaplains that can come in, and a lot of people are concerned about that. Well, we don't want anybody talking to us about religion, and we always say, oh no, they're not there to talk about religion. They're there to talk about how do you feel about your life inside. What are you proud of? What do you need forgiveness for? Whatever works for you. And if you want to talk about baseball, or for one of our chaplains, he loves World War II and can talk forever about that. So we're not there to dictate anything. And we also have home health aides, and we have volunteers that will go in and sit with the families, and as the families can go out and walk the dog, go out to lunch with somebody. The volunteer can stay there with the patient.
I understand that you have an unusual volunteer, four-legged.
We do. We have Bristol Camano, who's been with us for a couple of years now. Her trainer is Linda Camano, who has trained guide dogs for years and years. And Bristol goes into the home. She's a full-fledged volunteer. She's a service dog.
A therapy dog.
Therapy dog.
She's a therapy dog.
Right.
Yes.
Because Linda's very particular about
Yes,
that.
she's a therapy dog.
And what she does is she simply comes in and demonstrates beautiful presence to our patients, and we've seen her jump up on the bed at the patient's request and just be present. And a black lab there's nothing like it. If you're a dog lover,
Yes.
Yep, that's what I want.
Yeah.
That's exactly what I want.
Wonderful. Now, you're talking about in-home services, correct?
Correct.
And at what point do people typically come to you to find out about or to request services? Is there an ideal time? Who should be calling you?
The ideal time is 6 months when you get that initial diagnosis. I think that we are a death-denying culture, and that we truly believe, and again, we meet the patient where they're at, that there is something that can be done. So we're going to exhaust all those treatment resources, and we want people to come to us saying, okay, we're ready. We don't want to have anything more done. I think typically we get them in the last month of their life. Sadly, we get some people right in the last couple of days of their life. And that really doesn't allow them to have that whole breadth of hospice services.
And I'll back up just a little bit from that. We do have a companion program called AIM, Advanced Illness Management. So it's really, that is geared towards a slightly different service. It's provided by a nurse practitioner, but also in the home, making home visits to help people manage symptoms when they have a chronic illness or two, as often people have multiple chronic illnesses. So that program is for people at any stage, any age, any disease, any diagnosis. And that we really encourage people to reach out. More and more physicians in the area know about the program, and we actually do get 4 or 5 referrals a day usually for that program. Because often people are at home with a chronic illness, and they have an exacerbation of symptoms that lead them without any other medical help to the emergency room. And we all know how distressing it is to go to the emergency room. It's traumatic for the patient, for the family, it's not the best health outcome. So our program really works to be that intervention to keep people comfortable at home with their symptoms well managed. So, and that provides a nice bridge then when they have exhausted treatment options, when they're in full acceptance that this is the end of life and they want to live every day to the most, then that transition to hospice is much easier and much more fluid. And we really focus then on that point of helping people live to the fully each day in comfort and in peace in their home surroundings.
Yep.
So I would say call us as soon as you know that you or your loved one is facing a critical illness that's probably going to be long-term and probably life-limiting.
Oh, okay.
That could be years.
Right, yes,
Yeah.
it could be.
And so hospice deals with people at the end of their lives at home.
Yes.
And so this is kind of different than, I think, what most of us have understood as sort of a medical model of palliative care and dying. So how does that differ?
Well, I think that one of the things that healthcare is changing rapidly, and one of the things that people have always thought is that when it comes to it, we can always go to the hospital to die. And that's not necessarily true. To be in the hospital, you have to have an acute need. In fact, before we got here, we were watching a webinar from the National Hospice Organization about being hospice in the hospital. And they have to have an acute need that we cannot control at home. Either it's pain management or other symptoms related to their disease. And otherwise, we can't serve them in the hospital. So the regulations have really tightened since hospice began, and I think it was 1984. Yeah,
That's the first Medicare benefit.
Yeah.
Oh.
So
It
it's
keeps getting more regulated every
heavily
year.
regulated.
every year.
Well, and
Yes.
we're hearing more of what we
Which is
can and
fine.
cannot do.
Yeah,
But it ensures quality, so we believe very strongly in providing quality care. But where else in the medical system are you going to find somebody at 2 a.m. who's willing to get up out of bed and drive, a nurse I'm talking about, and drive to Fine or Herman DeKalb or Morristown or Star Lake or North Lawrence in a snowstorm because somebody is scared and uncomfortable and we can help? Where else?
24/7?
24/7.
Wow.
We have nurses on call who are the most wonderful people who do this because it's where their heart is, and they will go out if a family's in crisis and a patient's in crisis and help that family. Where else in the medical system do you get that?
This is an enormous county, so.
Enormous.
Yeah, how many staff members do you have?
Well, it depends on the day. We have 7 full-time nurses now. It does change sometimes, but 7 full-time and a couple of wonderful per diem nurses who, they're just as much a part of the staff as everyone. And they do all that call. They do visits during the day with patients, and then they take turns being on call and covering half the county. So we have two on a call at any given time, 24/7. You can reach a nurse and they will help. They'll either help you over the phone or they'll go to the home if need be.
Right.
We go to every death, and that is also an unusual thing. The nurse will go. You call at 1 o'clock in the morning that your loved one has passed and our nurse is there.
Oh,
And our nurse pronounces, our nurse calls the funeral home,
Right.
our nurse helps with any family rituals or time that the family may need. So And the coroner doesn't have to come.
No,
We love
no.
to tell people this, if a person dies at home without being on hospice,
Right.
it's an unattended death, and the police and the coroner have to get involved.
Right.
If they're on hospice, none of that happens. We take all that out of it so the family can be with their person
Right.
in whatever way they need to be
Right.
until
We're finding more
take away.
families want to stay, have the body stay a little bit longer. We get them all prepared for the funeral home. And then we say, when you're ready, call the funeral home and let them know you're ready to have them come pick them up. And I think that there's a great relief in that, and we're supporting them. Because it's a little scary when somebody dies. And the nurse comes in and says, oh, okay, how are you doing? She's checking in on them. And we get report about that in the morning. If there's any concerns, then my staff is gonna follow up and see how things are going. We heard that you were struggling a little bit, how can we help? And just checking in with them.
That's amazing. This gives me a little window of understanding. A few years ago, my sister-in-law was at the end of her life, and their kids were grown and gone, and my brother was there, and he called on, not your hospice, he's over in Vermont, but I now understand the kind of support that he really needed and that he got through hospice, and even to where he was making phone calls to family, and there was someone right there with him to sort of
Right.
get him through it, so it's
right.
wonderful. Now,
the bereavement piece, just real quick, just to tag on, is that's another unusual part of hospice. We don't just walk out the door at the death and say goodbye. We follow that family for a year with our bereavement program and offer counseling, support groups. Mary's staff is wonderful. They have got this down to a science.
They
and,
do, they
and
do.
really meet people where they need. And we also offer that to community members regardless of whether they had a patient with us. But what other segment of the medical community
Offers, nobody
follows
does
the
that.
patient's families?
oh my, yeah.
You're lucky you don't get a bill, and that's it for the last
Right,
year
right,
from a medical
exactly.
practice. So
Oh my gosh.
that's I just wanted to point out that our bereavement program is very wonderful and really goes a long way toward helping
It does.
in that aftermath.
It does.
Wow, even not immediate family, but that's great.
Yes.
Yes. Friends and family too.
Yeah.
And I understand that you do something similar, Mary, in our schools?
We do. When there's been a death of a student or a faculty member, they call and let me know, and they tell me what they need. Sadly, we have school districts here in St. Lawrence County that have become quite professional and know exactly what to do. And I can coach them from the phone, or I can go on site and coach them from there. And it's really allowing them to do the work. I'm just behind the scenes saying you might want to do this, you might want to do that. As you well know, I'm really behind the scenes, and it's really the school. The kids don't know me, and the teachers are going to be there after I leave. So how do we get everyone back uprighted after a death of a student
That's
or
quite a
faculty?
service.
It's pretty cool. Yeah.
Now, recently,
yes.
in the Watertown Daily Times, there is a fairly lengthy article about hospice and their services and in-home care and such. And if you don't mind, I found it, and maybe I'm wrong, I found it a little bit disturbing because I really embrace the services of hospice, but it seems like some of the people who are reporting on being in the home with a loved one who was nearing the end of life were frustrated, tired, and were saying things like, it's not all it's cracked up to be. I'm not sure whether they meant hospice or caring for someone who's dying.
I think it's that the good death or the peaceful death or the easy death.
Right.
Death isn't pretty. Even a peaceful death,
Right.
a good death, isn't necessarily pretty, and it's scary. And people are exhausted by the time the end comes. They have been caring
Incredibly.
for this loved one
Yeah.
for maybe years. We don't know what their trajectory has been. So I think one thing I do agree in this article is it is hard to care for someone at the end of life. It can be very challenging. You and I have both done it.
Right. We have.
And it's hard. It's hard to walk with someone. It's hard to be up in the night And to watch this sometimes, even when it's relatively easy, and I use that word tenuously because it's not easy, it's a hard path to walk, but on the other hand, I've had the personal experience of having my father die in the hospital in intensive care and my mother die at home under my care, and they were both difficult, but I vastly preferred my mother's experience. The ICU is loud, it's impersonal, it was just chaos outside of the room, and there's no privacy, and you have all these other people in distress, and the energy is really pretty negative, and I thought that was negative for my father as well, whereas my mother had a very different experience. So I see both sides of it. It was challenging and not pleasant. I also had some resources that other people don't have. My mother was not up here. She was in another area. We needed more help because I was commuting. I know, so, but I was able to scrape together people to cover her 24 hours when I couldn't be there. That is so hard. I had no idea, in spite of being in this business, I had no idea that when I needed 24-hour care from my mother, I would be so unable to find it. And I got very lucky that I could scrape together Monday through Friday, and then I could be there on the weekends. I think we have this picture in our mind, all of us, me included, that there were people there who could help. That there was going to be people, because hospice can't be there. And that's one of the things in this article was that, oh, they pay hospice all this money, why don't they have staff in there 24 hours a day? Well, we get, it sounds like a lot of money, it is. We get $140 average a day per person for every day they're on hospice. Out of that, we pay for all that staffing, we pay for all of their medications, we pay for hospital beds, commodes, walkers, whatever they need in the home. What else would we pay for? Lab work if they happen to need something.
Maybe transportation to respite. We pay for respite, 5 days of respite, so the caregiver can take a break. We're really looking at what the needs are and what they need in the home to take care of them and take care of them well. I think
but that doesn't extend to being 24-hour care.
It does not.
So. And
I think that the article really highlights one of the bigger challenges that we're experiencing on hospice, and that's caregiving. There is an expectation that we're going to be there all the time, and we don't have the manpower for that, but nor are there resources in the community to help them with that. And people are stunned and well, what do you mean? It's like we have an amazing resource advocate, Brandy Walton, who knows where all the resources are. I've never seen somebody so well versed in St. Lawrence County. She's ours and you can't have her. But she's looking for what they would qualify for, how do we get them connected immediately. And at the end of the day, there's really not a lot of resources. And I think also people are looking for somebody to come in at, well, I can pay them $10 an hour, but that's not a living wage. No. And they can't feed a family on $10 an hour. And the reality is it's going to cost you money to bring somebody in. I had a caregiver, a friend out in California, and to have somebody just come in and sit with her mother, no skills at all other than sitting with them, it's $25 an hour. Yeah. And that's a lot of money for anybody. And
it's pushing $200,000 a year for a year if you had to pay for round-the-clock care for a year. And that's a cost that our medical system cannot bear, and most families can't bear.
No.
So I think our point is start thinking about this way in advance.
Absolutely.
Start planning for it. Start making those preparations and preparing your family.
Right.
My daughters have gotten a crash course in elder care over the last few years. And it's like, get ready, and don't plan on inheritance because I'm probably going to need it all for my care. So we just have to realize this is the system we're within now unless something dramatic changes. But the hospitals, they can't have people at end of life. It costs them however much it costs them every day, and nursing homes are limited and are
have
expensive.
5, and there's limited beds available. So what's your plan? And we always ask families, so what's your plan B? We like to have plan Bs because we want to know what happens when the caregiving does become overwhelming and they can't do it anymore. who's gonna come in and take over for you, or where are they gonna go? Because we have to start planning almost immediately for a nursing home. The beds are not there, when you want them. And a lot of people say, well, you know, we're just gonna play it by ear. And we strongly encourage them that that leads to trouble.
Yeah.
And that whether you're exhausted or not, you're gonna have to care for them. There's no place else for them to go.
And I'm thinking here in the North Country, young people are fleeing
Yes.
Yes.
to
Yes.
better opportunities. It's always so gratifying when a young person gets their education and plans to stay here, to
Right.
go
Absolutely.
into teaching or nursing or
Right.
whatever. But that, I think, is the exception.
It
Right.
is.
Rather
And
than
then
the
you
rule.
have elderly parents without any family support. And I've heard it said, oh, we've medicalized death, people used to die in the home all the time. Well, it was a very different world. People died quicker, we didn't have the treatments of prolonged life for
No.
5-10 years. People died relatively quickly when they got ill.
It wasn't long.
And they typically had family living next door and across the street.
Well, that's
and
true.
down, you know, it was much less of this diaspora of families. So our whole society has changed, and
Huge
and
shift.
that's a
Yeah.
challenge for hospice when we have an increasing number of people that don't have caregivers in the home.
Yeah.
And we see that across the United States.
Yes.
It's not just isolated to St. Lawrence County. You're gonna find that in every state, that they're pressed for resources, and there's really no caregivers for them. We don't want people dying all by themselves in their home unless that's really what they want. And we've had people that wanted that, but really, how are we gonna care for them at the end? And what's that gonna look like? And I think that, you know, no, they were not prepared for caregiving at all. Nobody is.
No.
We're not, you know, it's not a high school class. Here's caregiving 101, you know?
It should be, maybe.
Yeah, it should be,
remember
absolutely.
when there was
30-year-old should take it, maybe.
And we do have an old picture in the family album of some great whatever aunt in the old country laid out on the dining room
Yes.
table.
Yes,
Yeah.
oh, yeah,
And of course surrounded by family and so
Yes.
on, because that's,
definitely.
it was, you took care of it.
We did.
And people saw death much more
Yeah.
because people died, left and right. Children died.
Right.
Young
That's true.
adults died. We are very insulated from death. Most of us can get a substantial way into our lives without having a close family
Absolutely.
death. And I think that makes it all the more difficult. We're just that removed from it because people aren't dying like that, which is good.
Yeah.
But
I-
it leaves
I'm
us.
personally happy.
I'm thrilled. But we all will get there sooner or later.
Eventually.
And we need to make these plans.
So take out your crystal ball.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, what changes do we need to happen in the future? And what do you foresee happening? Because the baby boomers,
Oh, we're coming, we're here.
what did you call it, the
The
white,
silver tsunami.
the silver tsunami?
Yes, we're
on the
here, we're
way.
loud.
We're
Yeah.
here, we're
Yeah,
gonna just
so,
Forced to
swallow
reckon-
everybody. And
Yeah.
we're not gonna be quiet about it either, are we?
yeah,
No, we're not.
The boomers are not quiet.
No.
No, but we're gonna need medical care and we're gonna want it our way, and I think the next generation is gonna be hard pressed to have enough people
Very.
to fill these
Yes,
roles.
very.
Nobody wants to work as a home health aide.
No.
It's you know, we have to think about what we pay people
yeah.
and make sure that it's a livable wage.
Absolutely.
I feel that way about daycare. If we aren't gonna pay
Right.
people that
living
take
wage.
care of those near and dear us
Right.
at any phase in life.
Right.
So that, I think, is something that needs to happen, but the whole caregiver issue is going to have to come, it's gonna have to be dealt with, and I don't know how.
No.
But we have got to get together and work on
Right.
that, because that takes a toll on the caregiver's health.
And we continue to explore that a lot, in that what could we do to prepare caregivers? What is it that would be helpful to them? But you know, when you're caregiving, you're not coming out. You've got your job
Right.
is 24/7, and you don't think you're going to need it, so there's no reason for it. To take any of that training. So there's
Right.
a lot of challenges that we're exploring. How do we best serve these caregivers and get them ready for this?
Well, I'm certainly glad hospice is there on the case.
Yeah.
Even though the answers are not obvious
No, they're
yet.
not, but we will keep working on them.
Knowing what needs to happen, but the how is really a different thing. But the more I'm thinking, just from listening to you, the more that as a community,
Yes.
Yes.
we engage in the conversation,
Yes.
support each other, have a deeper level of understanding that, yes,
Yes.
Right.
it is hard.
It's
So
hard.
it doesn't come as a total surprise, not
Right.
that it will
Mhm.
make that any easier.
And if you know somebody who is a caregiver, is facing that daily journey, uphill battle, whatever you want to call it, step in. Offer to sit with the person for a few hours so the caregiver can go get a massage or just take a walk or take a nap.
Right.
Just,
Right.
Yeah,
the best thing we could do is give our time to that person and to help them at least ease that burden a little bit. And that may be ultimately the answer, is that it's gonna go back to community.
yeah.
And having
It
a
is.
community that steps up and then,
And
and is
engages.
able to rely on that when then you need it. So
Yeah.
that would be my message, I guess, that.
Okay, well, this leads me to, do you have any final words for our viewers?
I think that this is, as Ruth has said, this is hugely challenging. I think hospice is your resource. We've been doing it for a long time. We have lots of ideas. We have a lot of support that we can provide to you. And I think it's so important for families and patients to understand we meet you where you're at. And we're not there to force anything on you. Just what is it that you need and want, and how do we make that happen? And I think that hospice is about living. You live until you take your last breath. And so many people say, oh, I'm going on hospice, that's it, it's over. No, it's not over at all. Well, how do we help you to continue to celebrate your life and the accomplishments that you've had? We can do that through life review, we can do that with volunteers. Hospice is really a wealthy resource for patients and families here in St. Lawrence County and all over the United States. Really take advantage of that.
And you have a website that is, it's a magical
Plethora, yes.
Magical portal.
I know, it is.
It is.
No, I've sort of explored it. And can you say just a couple words about the Keepsakes program?
Yes, Keepsakes is an online life legacy repository. You can create an account, anybody can create an account, it's free. Just
Yep.
go to our website, hit the Keepsakes tab, and once you are registered, which is painless, you put in there's no cost at all ever. You'll never be asked for money. You create your account, and then you can start doing life review, you can message board, you can support other people can support you through that medium. But the coolest thing is you can make audios or videos that are then stored on the site and can be sent to people after you're dead. Say you want to have a message you record for your daughter on her wedding day,
Right.
or on a grandchild's baptism, or something meaningful that you want to have this message. Now, people think, oh my goodness, that could be really weird if it just pops up in an email, and that doesn't happen.
Uh-oh.
Everybody has to have an account, so everybody knows that this will be
That's right.
happening. They may not know exactly when, but then they'll get a notification that this is available on the site. And then they go to the site. It could get very difficult if it just pops up on your phone.
Right.
So no, don't worry, that won't happen. But then at a time of the choosing, whoever you choose to be executor for your account can release those videos, or just open them up at any time to anybody if that's what you want. It's a way to memorialize your thoughts and pass on your life lessons that you want people to know. And that's really why that site was developed by David Levy. He when his father died, he thought as he was being buried, well, there's so much I'm never going to learn from my father. I wish I had asked him
Those
more,
wisdom.
could hear that wisdom and have that passed down. So David created this whole company to help people do that. So, and that's just something we're bringing to the community, so.
So helping to shape your own legacy.
That's
Yes,
right.
yes.
What do you want people to know? What would you like to tell them?
How do you
Yeah.
want to be remembered?
Yeah.
Exactly. Oh my
And
gosh.
what's the value of having some family pictures up that you will? This is what was important for you to know. This is Uncle Fred. This is Uncle John.
Yeah.
This is what they did. Because we don't listen when they're dying,
No.
and then we regret. So
Right.
here's an opportunity to put that out there.
And
It's
you've
a
got
pretty
that
cool
person's
site.
voice.
You
Say that
do.
person's voice,
Yeah.
which
I
is
think
just
that's
precious.
wonderful.
Yeah,
It's
it's wonderful.
precious.
And in addition, I know you've got educational programs like Lunch and Learn.
Mhm.
Yep, we
And-
just did writing your own obituary. And we have the Coffin Club coming up in March.
And that's excellent. It's anything you ever wanted to ask a funeral director.
Yes.
And you'd be surprised. It's so fascinating how many questions people have, and
Tons of questions. And it's things that you, when they ask, you're like, oh, that's a really good question.
Yeah.
I hadn't thought about that. And we've actually rotate the funeral directors around the county into the presentation. And it's just fascinating. People love coming to that. Just love.
Yeah.
Which sounds weird, but
No,
they're
it's a
like,
good
oh,
one.
I've got lots of ideas.
I went to one, and it was the one thing, excuse me, that helped me open the conversation about death with my husband,
oh.
whose attitude was, I'll be gone, do what you want. And I said,
Oh, no.
Oh, no.
And we'll cooperate.
it was one of the few times that we had a conversation and we were on the same page.
Oh, wow.
Who knew?
Well, and actually, the lunch and learns are conversation starters. You know, if you are struggling how to figure out how to have the conversation with the family, come to a lunch and learn. We're going to be talking about all of that. If we're introducing it to you, you can use that same format to introduce it to your family.
And they can look on the website and see what's coming up.
Yep.
We take the summer off from those, but
Yeah.
then it'll be back in the fall, and you
Yep.
can sign up for, they're
And
all
if it's-
free, and we provide a yummy lunch.
We do.
Free options
Yes.
provided by you, and
Yeah.
that's awesome.
And if you're not ready to verbalize the conversation, you have an excellent lending library.
Oh,
Yes, we do.
Yeah.
We've been building that for years, and it's almost completely done so that everything's barcoded and that you can come check out books. It's-
Anyone?
Anyone, yeah,
Anyone.
anyone from the
Anyone.
community.
And Mary has an encyclopedic knowledge of all books, death and dying. So if you want to, no, I'm not even kidding, I'm in awe. If you want to, you just tell Mary what kind of thing you're
Yeah.
interested in and what you
Yeah.
want to know about, and she'll pull out the book for you. So
Yeah.
she's
Yeah.
the resource too that you're not,
It's pretty.
you don't
yeah,
often
I
get.
love- I
So
love libraries.
every book on death and dying, she has
Pretty
read
much,
it.
yeah.
Well, thank you both so much
Thank
for
you for
your
having
time.
us.
This
Having
has
us.
been,
Yes.
it's been such a pleasure, and I know this is not the last time we'll
Probably not.
No.
Definitely
But
not.
thanks for helping us better understand the mission and the services of Hospice of St. Lawrence Valley. These conversations are a production of North Country Matters, filmed here at the Fred W. Cleveland Computer Center at the Potsdam Public Library in collaboration with the St. Lawrence County League of Women Voters. Until next time, remember,